What's good, everyone? It's Fizzy here, back again with another video. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about chords. I got a comment like sometime like last week or 2 weeks ago on talking about how to make chords, or how do I spice up my chords. So today I'm going to be showing you guys the beginner, the intermediate, and then the advanced ways of making chords. Like, I'll show you how I personally make them. So first things first, you want to open up your DAW. So in this case, I'm going to be using FL Studio. To make things simpler, I'm just going to be using Labs, and I'm going to be using the soft piano preset. And Labs is free, so anyone can get this, so you can follow along. So as you guys can see, I have soft piano here, so it's just a normal piano sound. So to make things easy, I'm going to be using the BPM of, like, let's say 124. Yeah, so we're going to start off with that. So the first things first is that FL Studio makes it really easy for you when it comes to making chords. So first things first, you have to pick your scale. And FL Studio makes it very easy to pick your scale. So first thing you do is go up to this drop down arrow here. Then you then go to view. Next, you then go to scale highlights. And then here you can see a list or a bunch of types of scales. So you have the major bebop, major Bulgarian, hextonic, and so forth. But in this case, we are going to be using the minor. So we are now currently in the scale of C minor. And how you know is that if you go back to view, so if you go back to view scale highlighting, and you guys can see here that I have minor natural, and then the root note is C. So that means that the root note in this case is C. So after you pick your scale, it's very easy the way FL Studio does it. So next I'm going to show you is what I also do. There's no lines, there's nothing to indicate whether or not something is in scale or out of scale. So what you then have to do is go to this piano roll option again, go to view, then next go to note grid highlights, or you can also hit option B if you're using Mac. So if I hit option B now, it's gone. Hit option B, it's there. And what this shows is the light area. So for example, let me zoom in. So what this shows is that the light areas here, for example, D and C, are all within the scale. But you guys can see here, this C sharp is not part of the scale. Why? Because it's grayed out. The first things first when it comes to making a beginner chord is knowing this. When it comes to FL Studio, so to make things easier, I have ghost notes enabled. So what that is that if you again go back to this setting here, you'll see ghost channels, and what ghost channels will do is just show you like where other notes are. So in this case, I just placed down the C minor scale just to make things easier. The beginner way how to make chords, FL Studio makes it very easy in terms of this. So the first thing you have to do is place down your root note. So in this case, it's going to be C. And then instead of placing the next note directly above, which would have been D, you're then going to place it on D sharp. So the way it goes is note, skip, note. You then skip a note again, and then you then place your note. And this is what creates the C minor scale. And you can actually use this for every single scale when it comes to making your beats on FL Studio. So let's see. So that's a C minor scale. So how some people like to remember is like when you place your root note, skip 2 and place on your third, which would be skip, then place on the third. And then lastly, after you place your second note, you then skip 3 and place on the fourth. So 1, 2, 3, and then place on the 4. And that's how you make your minor scale. And in terms of if you want to make your major scale, it would be note, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then place on the fourth. And then for your last note, which would be the top note, is skip 2 and then place on the third. And that's how it goes when you make your major scale. So this is what it sounds like. So yeah, and then the opposite is just for when you make a minor, which is skip 2, place on the third, and then skip 3, place on the fourth. That's how you make a minor note. The beginner way of how to make your chord progression is literally just this. It's very simple. So I'm gonna make a chord progression. And before I go on, it's actually really important that you know like music theory a little bit. So the way it goes is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's how we mention our chords or our notes when it comes to music. So if I say play the fifth, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the fifth note within the scale. So the progression I'm going to go for is going to be a 1 and then to a 5. So the beginner way of how to make chords, I'm going to show you guys. So I'm going to be making a 1, 5 all throughout just to make things simple. So the first note I'm going to place down is my C. And then I'm going to use the same formula I use, which is note, skip, note. or in this case, no, skip 2, place on the 3rd, which would be 1, 2, skip, and place on the 3rd. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is skip 3 and place on the 4th. So skip, 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 and place on the 4th. Or again, you can use no, skip, note, skip, note. So this is what my C minor chord sounds like. And I'm now gonna do the exact same thing for my G minor chord. So it's gonna be no on the G, which would now be my root note, skip, note, which would then be A sharp, and then I'm then gonna do it again, skip, note, which in this case would be D. And this is what it sounds like. And this is really boring. Like, honestly, this is what a beginner would normally make. Like, there's nothing else to it. It's just the same notes over and over again. And your progression and your melody is just gonna sound bland and boring. So this is how typically like a beginner, when they're first starting off, would make their progressions and everything. And again, if this is the level that you're at, that's fine. You know, it's a learning curve. Everyone has to, when I first started making beats and everything, I had to do the exact same thing. But now we're gonna now move on to the intermediate level. So what someone that's probably more advanced or more knowing of how to make chords and everything would do is now start to incorporate other aspects of music theory. So next, you know, they might actually start to add in a root note. And what your root note is, your beginning note, which would be this one here. So the way I said it was a 1, 5, my root note would be a 1, and then my next root note would be a 5. So I would go C, and then I will just then take it down here, as you guys can see. And then next, it would then be G. So that's how I would make, that's how someone that's more intermediate would then start to add things. And then what another person might start to do that's more intermediate will now start to add in, just break up the chord so that it sounds a bit better. That's someone that's a bit more, you know, advanced at making chords. This is what it would sound like. So it sounds a lot better than the beginning. It has rhythm now, and it also has like a nice catchy melody, which is just that repetitive, you know, up and down movement. So now moving on to someone that's probably just a bit more advanced, but not yet at the level of an expert or a pro at making chords. So what someone else might do is actually start to bring this down. And then as you guys can see, this is what's called inversion. And inversion is just bringing a note either an octave higher or an octave lower than what it's meant to be. So in this case, as you guys can see, I just use command up or command down. So in this case, the D that's up here for the G minor chord, I brought it down by hitting command down. And again, so let me show you. So this is just something someone that's a bit more advanced would do. So let me show you what it sounds like. And then I'm now going to do the exact same thing to the D sharp here. So I've now inverted it higher. So this is what it's going to sound like. And again, this sounds a lot better now. So we're now going to bring this back down to where they originally were, but we're still going to keep the same pattern. And now someone that's a bit more advanced, that knows something about, like, you know, music production, everything, would now start to strum it again. So the way I'm going to categorize this is advanced level 1, advanced level 2, and advanced level 3. So we're now going to bring things back again as if the level of a level 2, which would be, you know, the inversions. And what I'm now going to do is hit option S. And what this does is strum. So let me show you. So what strumming does is just make things slightly off grid, and it doesn't make it as robotic. So if everything was at the very center on the grid, on the line, it would just sound really robotic, and, you know, there was no like life or soul behind it. And that's not what music is. So what strumming does is that it just brings things slightly off grid, so that's not too noticeable, or, you know, it sounds a bit more natural. So if I was to over exaggerate, this is what it sounds like. And if I was to under exaggerate, this is what it sounds like. And depending on what you want to do, you know, you can, you know, bring it all the way down or bring it all the way up. But in this case, I'm just going to slightly bring up, so that's just like slightly off the grid. And this is what it's going to sound like. So I think that's a bit too much. So I'm just going to do it again. And I'm just going to bring it down a little bit more. And there, it's very, very like it's really, really small, but you can notice the difference of when everything's on the grid and when it's not on the grid. So this is it without the strummer on. You can hear everything starts at the very beginning, and this is what it sounds like when the strummer is on. and it's just slight delays, and that's what makes it sound a bit more natural. So a beginner would just have the chords playing by itself, no rhythm and no, you know, melodies or anything going on. An advanced person would actually start to add in a bit more rhythm and then, you know, play with the chords a little bit. Then an advanced level 2 would add in inversions, and an advanced level 3 would have both the level 1 and level 2, which is the rhythm and the inversions. So now that I'm happy with all of this, someone now that's a pro would start to do things a lot more differently. So someone that's a pro would start to add in top line melodies. So in this case, I'm just going to make a quick top line melody. So I've now added in a top line melody, and altogether this is what it sounds like. And then with the top line melody in now, everything just sounds more coherent and it sounds more full. And what I mean by full is that there's a bit of low end, there's a bit of the mids, which is coming from the chords. And then there's now a top end melody, which now stands out as well. So everything just all together just sounds really complete. With that in mind, this is what someone that's a bit more a pro would do, in my personal opinion. They would have the bass notes, they would have the chords, and they probably would mess around with the chords as well. And then they would then add in a top line melody that's also catchy. And this top line melody can be used again in other parts. Like for example, someone could use a top line melody, but instead of using a piano sound, they use a bell sound. So the top line melody goes for a lot of things. It's just what's most catchy about the beat or the melody that you're making. And then again, depending on how some people that are pro would then start to add in more stuff. And sometimes it can get really overcomplicated, but trust me, look at this. And as you guys can see, I added another top line melody. And again, it's just to add in more variety or more variation. So this could go on towards like the last 4 bars of your loop or whatever. So this is how I would class a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced / pro person when it comes to making their chords. The takeaways from this is that I would say, number 1, have your chord progression in mind. So in this case, I use the 1-5 progression. After you have your progression in mind, number 2, adding your root notes. After you adding your root notes, build your chords. After you build your chords, add in your bass note, which is always going to be your root note. Lastly, add in some rhythm into your chords. Depending on the type of beat that you're going for, rhythm is also always a nice thing to have. It also plays into how you make your drums. So in this case, I now have an idea what my drums would sound like. Add it in a top line melody. That's your 16 that I'd say you need to do. And then after number 7, be creative. Add in more top line melodies, change up the pattern, add in a beat switch, just be creative with your melodies. And yeah, Percy, that's how I would do my chords. And yeah, that's Percy how I would class a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced person when it comes to making your chords. If this video helped you out, make sure to hit the subscription button down below. I really appreciate all the comments and like all the feedback that I'm getting from all of you. Keep dropping what type of videos you guys would like me to make next. I'm really down to make almost anything. And yeah, that's it for me, everyone. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure again to hit the subscription button, hit the like button, and comment down below what you think of the video. Comment down if this video helped you on how to make your chords and everything. And yeah, that's it for me, everyone. Peace.